Hey everybody, it's Jim Johnson, project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the Captain's Log solo RPG, both published by Modiphius Entertainment. Welcome back to my channel. I thought I would talk a little bit more about Captain's Log today. I'm not quite ready to go back into my actual play. I'm still working on that. Still waiting for my account to be approved at AO3. And as soon as that's done, I can start posting the actual prose up on there, and then I can continue the prose in videos. But I got some stuff behind the scenes I'm working on just to get that ready. Plus, I'm working, right? I got it. I got all my work to do, so I'm trying to keep up on that. In addition to filling the creative meter by using Captain's Log. But wanted to touch base with Captain's Log here just a little bit. One of the most common questions I have heard on social media over the last week or two from everybody is what can I use with Captain's Log, or what do I need to use with Captain's Log in order to tell stories? Or I'm a Star Trek Adventures gamer for a long time. I have a whole bunch of products on my shelf. What is any of it compatible with Captain's Log? So I thought I'd just go and do a short little video here just talking about Captain's Log and the compatibility of it with other Star Trek Adventures products. First, just a reminder that Star Trek Adventures, the Captain's Log RPG, is like this book, and I've got a copy of it here, is a standalone product, right? This is a complete core book in and of itself. It's got all the rules you need to play the game. It's got complete character generation, starship generation, loads of probability matrices, random tables, etc. in here on playing the game. Also, just a wealth of writing advice, storytelling advice, and Star Trek lore, right? Especially if you're a new Star Trek fan, or you just don't know that much about the property and you want to learn more about the property, we provide just a wealth of material in this book to get you ramped up and give you just enough to get started, right? Because obviously Star Trek is a 56-year-old property, 57, 56. It's an old property. I mean, not old, but it's a very mature property. And there is thousands of books out there about Star Trek, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, etc. And we couldn't hope to be that much detailed in this book. So, first couple chapters talk about Star Trek defined, Star Trek universe, gives you enough detail that you can start writing. If you want to supplement this with a Memory Alpha website or a Memory Beta, there are other websites out there that even StarTrek.com has just a load of information, databases, encyclopedias, etc., that you can rely on to get even more detail, especially for pictures. Right, we have 58 different alien species detailed in this book that you could play. We didn't have the room for pictures for all of them, right? So you might know what a Vulcan looks like, and obviously a human, maybe a Tellarite, maybe an Andorian. But when you start getting into the more very specific Star Trek races, maybe you're not quite familiar with them. Like, how does a Betazoid look different from a human? That's a nice little trivia question for you. How does a Bajoran look different from a Betazoid? So on and so forth. So, hitting the internet, which is, just this gigantic, Titanic, obviously, encyclopedia of all things everywhere, including Star Trek. Go check it out. But anyway, so Captain's Log, yeah. So literally every Star Trek Adventures product could be compatible or usable with Captain's Log. And I'm talking the Division source books, especially the lore and the random plot component sections, all the different starships. In fact, I think all the starships in the command source book are probably in here. But like all the lore, all the information about Starfleet, the command division, all the NPCs, all the plot hooks, etc., all that stuff, absolutely portable. Same thing with the operations source book, with the sciences source book, all those random tables in there, like the technobabble tables, totally applicable to Captain's Log. In fact, you can easily just use the charts and tables in there to help build out sectors, build out planets, build out systems, and then supplement it with the content in Captain's Log. So division source books, no problem. Quadrant source books, especially no problem there either. A lot of the species in those books, especially the Gamma Quadrant and Delta Quadrant books, those species that are unique to those quadrants or those areas of space, we didn't include in here, but it would be super easy to port them into Captain's Log, because Captain's Log is a streamlined version of the 2D20 system. All you really need for a species is a paragraph description of the species, like what they are, what they think, what their motivations are, etc., and then the 3 attribute modifiers, right? Every species in the game has, when you pick your species, you have 3 attribute modifiers. You can make +1 to 3 different attributes, Or there's no reason you couldn't do a +2 to one attribute and a +1 to another attribute, right? I mean, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Or in particularly unique cases, maybe you have a +3 to one attribute. Maybe there's some alien species that is so super focused on one particular thing that maybe they get a +3 to, whatever, fitness, daring, whatever. Anyway, so super easy to port in new species into the game if they're not already in Captain's Log. You just need to use a little bit of creativity. Either use the Star Trek Adventures product as a guidance to figure out what those 3 attribute mods are, or if you want to port in an alien species from a completely different franchise, right? So people love to do that. So like if there's something from another franchise that you want to pull in, there are certainly other science fiction and fantasy franchises out there that have very interesting and unique species. By all means, drop them into Star Trek. They'd fit, and plus alternate universes and time travel and portals are a thing. So who's to say your favorite character from a different franchise couldn't make an appearance, right? Crossovers have been happening for almost as long as Star Trek fan fiction, right? So have fun with that. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, really the Division source books, the Quadrant source books, the adventure books, I haven't spent a lot of time personally putting a lot of brain exercise around how would one adapt a published adventure into Captain's Log. I'm confident it could be done because it's all laid out there for you, right? You would just be adding your own character and perspective onto it, and maybe leaning into the probability matrices in Captain's Log to add even more color to the story. And I'm sure at some point Michael Dismuke and I will probably cover that on our Continuing Conversations podcast. And if we don't get to that relatively soon, I might just do a video about that, and maybe I'll go grab one of my favorite adventures that we've published over the years and just say and just talk about how I might adapt it using Captain's Log. I could make it easy and use one of the ones that I've written, but maybe I'll just pick a random one. Or if you have one that you like, if there's a particular Star Trek Adventures pre-published adventure that you like, and you would like to see a conversation around how it could be converted to Captain's Log, drop a comment in the comments down below. Let me know. Maybe I'll just pick a couple and go for it. The low hanging fruit would be for me to take my either the Living Campaign adventure I wrote, the Convoy SE-119, and see what I could do with that, or I could take the tricorder, the 3-part mini campaign in the tricorder set, Keyhole of Eternity, and I could turn that around into a solo RPG experience. Absolutely doable, I think, because really what you're looking for is the story. The story started like the inciting incident, and then what happens next, and whether you're using that what happens next, whether it's in a pre-written adventure or you're using the probability matrices to make it up, or some blend of the two, I think it would absolutely be doable. Again, I'd have to actually get into it and try it, or rely on somebody else to get into it and try it. But I can't imagine, just knowing how those stories are structured, those adventures are structured, and how Captain's Log works. I think they would work really well together to help give you a little bit of structure around your story. So if you're feeling a little trepidation around writing something completely out of whole cloth, even though you're using the book as a guide and all the probability matrices as a guide, I think using a pre-written adventure might be doable. Yeah, I'd have to play with that. And then, of course, the mission briefs. Mission briefs would probably be even easier because the mission briefs give you high-level outline and rough plot points, but are really super flexible in terms of like how you get from point A to point B to point C, and taking those high-level like scene-by-scene breaks, those act breaks, and then using Captain's Log to fill in the scenes and to fill in all the texture around the characters and the motivations and the NPCs and the events, and just adding all that detail and world building and color that you can get through the probability matrices in Captain's Log. I think mission briefs would absolutely be a great way to start telling some additional stories if you're not quite ready to use the probability matrices in the book by themselves, or if you just want a little bit of variety, right? And the mission briefs, I mean, we've got 11 mission brief packs available now for free that you can go download right now. Plus we've got at least 4 or 5 more books that have a dozen each. So I mean, we're closing in on 200 mission briefs, and that's 200 standalone dedicated episodes that you could run right now. Plus the 90 or something standalone adventures we have, or mini campaign adventures. I mean, there's a ton of story. There's a ton of Star Trek Adventures story out there that you can start using right away, or just go either buy it or download it and start playing. So even if you feel like you don't have a creative bone in your body, and you want to use these tables to help you out, go pick up any of that story that we've already written for you over the last 7 years, and adapt it and bring your character into it, or your characters if you're playing cooperatively with a group of friends using the book as your GM. You could do that and just have a lifetime of storytelling adventures in your own version of the Star Trek universe. I think that was what this book is really intended to be, as a toolkit to unlock your creativity and to tell the most amazing Star Trek stories you can tell. And then if you feel so inclined, share them with other people online. Do a YouTube video, do a Twitch, get it up on your blog, get an account to Wattpad or AO3, and just share your stories with the universe, because like me personally, I love reading Star Trek stories, and that this is going to be able to unlock other people's creativity so that they can tell Star Trek stories and I get to read them. That's win-win for me, man, or people, whatever. So anyway, just thinking through the other products though. So Shackleton Expanse, that's a multi-year campaign in and of itself. There would be no difficulty translating that into Captain's Log. The Lower Decks campaign guide, Utopia Planitia, the Discovery campaign guide, the Tricorder set, the Klingon Empire source book, the Klingon Empire core book. I mean, all that stuff you could absolutely port right in here without difficulty. Starships are streamlined in Captain's Log, so you don't need to worry about starship talents, at least from a mechanical point of view. You don't need to worry about character talents from a mechanical point of view. We've streamlined momentum. We've streamlined threat. Task resolution is pretty much the same as it is in Star Trek Adventures. We've streamlined extended tasks. Actually, we made them optional. We've removed the scientific method, but there's no reason you couldn't use the concept of the scientific method in Captain's Log to help work your way through scientific problems. I'm really struggling to think of any Star Trek Adventures product that we've created that you couldn't use in Captain's Log, other than maybe the challenge dice, because we don't use the challenge dice in Captain's Log, so you don't need them in this game. You just need the D20s. If you decide to put this Captain's Log up on like a virtual tabletop, you could use miniatures or tokens or the map tile sets, but that's really not necessary. This is meant to be primarily a journaling game, and theater of the mind, writing it down. But who's to say? I mean, there's no reason you couldn't put a group together onto a virtual tabletop and run it like a traditional RPG, just using the book instead of a game master. Or maybe you have a game master as your facilitator who's got the book in front of them and is using the tables to kind of help the game play as you go. I mean, we provide options for all three of those modes of play, like solo play, guided play, and then co-op play if you have a group of players who just don't have a game master and you just want to use the book as a tool. You can absolutely do that. But just thinking about all the different Star Trek Adventures products, I'm really hitting a, I don't want to say a roadblock, but I'm really struggling to think of anything that we've published that couldn't find use in Captain's Log in some format or another. And like the book's only been out on pre-order for a couple of weeks now. Of course, I've been developing it for almost 2 years with my team. But even then, like just thinking through it as we were developing it, we were fairly confident it was going to be compatible with everything. And now that it's actually out and I have it, I have the copy in my hands, I'm able to flip through it and I'm able to annotate it and bookmark it. And now that especially now that I'm working my way through my official first actual play, like I did a lot of play testing of the game while we were developing it, and so I had a sense of how the pieces were coming together. But it wasn't really until I had the I don't know where they are, they're around here somewhere. Once I got the print proofs, the unbound print proofs, and I actually started to see this come together as an actual book, I was like, oh wait, now I can really use this as a tool. And now that I've got it in an actual book form, I can start flipping pages. I got the bookmark in here. I can start bookmarking it. I love Post-it notes, so I've got a whole slew of these little Post-it notes in red, blue, and gold, of course, right? Red, blue, and gold, of course, being the Star Trek colors. And I'm gonna tab this thing all over, all three edges. I'm gonna tab it all over the place just to hit those flowcharts and the important probability matrices that I can use. Of course, I've got it on a PDF here as well. So if I need to go in here and start pulling up the key flowcharts, right? Like obviously, you'll find the ones that you really like. Like I like this one, the getting started flowchart. That's really important. That gives you the step-by-step guide. There's one that's even more detailed a little later. Where is that one? I'm showing you the whole book. There's the core game loop. This is like the meat and potatoes of the game right here. You know, narrate to a task. Like just tell your story. Use the probability matrices to tell your story until you get to a decision point, to a point of uncertainty, and whether that's rolling a task, getting into combat, having some uncertainty, like is something going to be X or something going to be Y or something else. That's where you start pulling in the probability matrices to help you tell that story. So figure that out, and then you go from there. So anyway. Yeah, I think the focus of this video was meant to be what can I use with Captain's Log from the Star Trek Adventures game line, because we have a pretty deep backlist at this point, right? I mean, we've been at this for 7 years. We have over 100 different products in digital and print, or print, and I think I'm struggling to think of. And I'm looking at my shelf, so apologies if I'm looking away from you. Like I've got a shelf of stuff over there, and I got a shelf behind me, and I don't want to turn around to look behind me because that's awkward. But like literally everything we've published for Star Trek Adventures, you could find a use in Captain's Log. Even Utopia Planitia, even though Captain's Log uses a streamlined starship combat system, and the ships themselves and stations themselves are super streamlined in terms of like what you actually use mechanically. And Utopia Planitia, by and large, is a pretty mechanics-heavy book because we presented as many space frames as we could, all the options for weapons, shields, combat, so on and so forth. You could still use all the flavor in that book and all the space frames in that book, and just use the lore. Certainly, the lore would port over without a difficulty. But I think even Utopia Planitia would be super compatible with Captain's Log, even just to get more starship. Just get the pictures in your head of the classes that we couldn't fit in here. So yeah, I think so. I guess long-winded answer to the question: what Star Trek Adventures products can I use with Captain's Log? The short answer is all of them. If you want to, you don't have to, because again, Captain's Log is a completely standalone game. You don't have to. You really truly don't have to buy anything else other than Captain's Log in order to have a lifetime of Star Trek storytelling possibilities at your fingertips, ready to unlock your brain, ready to unlock that creativity and go with it. There is, Star Trek Adventures certainly, like I said, 100+ products in our backlist that you can use. But beyond that, like if you go to the next level of the onion, you're talking 50 years worth of Star Trek books that have been published: nonfiction, fiction, comic books, graphic novels, video games, stage plays, teleplays, radio dramas. What else is out? I mean, there's so much story, so much Star Trek story out there, and you could use all of it if you wanted to, right? In fact, if you wanted to get really creative, and here's a challenge for the writers among you: grab any Star Trek novel that you like grab your favorite Star Trek novel, find it in paperback if you can, or in ebook if you can only find it in an ebook. But seriously, grab a used copy of it, start going through it with a highlighter, and literally tear it apart, and find the scenes. Find the section breaks, find the scene breaks, and find all the key story components, all the key story beats in that novel, and then map it to the mission tracker process here on in Captain's Log. Right, we have a mission tracker here to help you kind of gauge how long your story's going to be. So if your novel's got 35 scenes, then you've got 35 of these little deltas that you can start folding into your Captain's Log and start checking it off as you work your way through them. I can't even. I couldn't even tell you what novels I would pick right now. Probably like the DS9 relaunch, starting with Avatar book one by S.D. Perry. Fantastic book, fantastic launch to the DS9 relaunch, and then you could get into the Mission Gamma books, which is all about them exploring the Gamma Quadrant. There are no shortage of novels out there that you could use as inspiration, or simply just directly rip them off, right? Just use, like, if you want to do like a Star Trek Vanguard Captain's Log series, take Vanguard, swap out one character for your character, and then just go tell those stories and adventures and have fun with it. So like if you don't have enough story potential in the Star Trek Adventures line, there are there is no shortage of other Star Trek books. I mean, there's FASA RPG stuff, there's Decipher RPG stuff, there's Last Unicorn Games. There are other game companies doing Star Trek or near Star Trek stuff. There are other solo RPGs doing science fiction and fantasy books that have their own oracles and random tables and charts and whatnot. Fold those right in, because I'm pretty confident most of those would be pretty compatible with our game without a whole lot of difficulty. Yeah, so I mean, there's just so much potential here. I mean, again, with Star Trek, like grab any copy of the encyclopedia, grab any of the Hero Collector Eagle Moss hardcovers, like the DS9 technical manual, or the Enterprise technical manual, or the Voyager technical manual, even the classic Next Generation technical manual, the DS9 technical manual. I mean, any of the Star Trek nonfiction that has been published over the last 40 years. There's probably nuggets in there that you can pull out and drop right into Captain's Log one way or another. I would recommend 2 other books, just because I'm me, and I've talked about these in other podcasts and other conversations, but I would highly, highly encourage you. I don't have them handy. I think they're on my shelf. I'd have to dig them up. But Judy and Garfield Reeves Stevens. Was it them? Hold on. Where is it? Yeah, they're right here. In fact, they're right behind me, so I'm going to pull them off my shelf. I'm going to show them off right now. 2 more books that you might want to think about, just in terms of storytelling and series building and getting into Star Trek in ways that you, if you really want to get into this stuff, like not just from a gaming standpoint, but from a writing standpoint, and also this might help you as a game master think about your campaigns that you want to build. There are 2 books I would highly recommend. I'm reasonably confident you can find used copies of these all over the place. Check thrift books, check Amazon, check whatever your favorite online retailer is. Check your local used bookstores. They can surely use your business. But the 2 books I would highly recommend to just think about story, but especially series creation, like when you're thinking about building a series, and especially for Captain's Log, because this is an opportunity for you to kind of be the producers, writers, actors, and directors all kind of wrapped into one. When you're doing your own kind of like journaling game. There are 2 books I'd recommend, and then I'll wrap this up because this is already getting long enough. The first one, The Making of Deep Space Nine. The Making of Star Trek Deep Space Nine by Judy and Garfield Reeves Stevens. This is a fantastic book. This came out around the 3rd season of DS9, and this is totally a soup to nuts. How was the series conceived by Berman and Michael Piller, and it is a wealth of information about how to build a television series from the ground up, talking about creating character bios, creating character descriptions, creating the setting, creating the universe, spinning off from Next Generation and the original series. What did they want to do with this series that was different from all the other series? There's just a wealth of the material in here from a writing, like learning how to write standpoint, learning how to write screenplays, and learning how to develop a series. Fantastic reference. I can't recommend this highly enough. This is the number 1 book I would recommend to everybody who's a big Star Trek fan, especially if you're a game master and if you're a creative writer and you want to get into like something like Captain's Log and build your own story or build your own series. Check it out. Next option, I recommend this one almost as much, especially if you're an original series fan and you are really into the transition and the growing pains that Star Trek had coming out of the original series, and then trying to figure out how are we going to relaunch Star Trek, because there was a number of efforts to relaunch Star Trek over the year in the 70s, right? It was going to be a new series, it was going to be a new network, it was going to be a movie, it was just all these things that were in a swirl. And then of course Star Wars came out in 1977, and that just blew everybody away, and that just changed everything. But as another great resource to think about how to build a series, how to think about a series, how to start putting all those pieces together and letting it evolve, Star Trek Phase 2. Again, by the Lost series. And this is also by Judy and Garfield Reeves Stevens, another fantastic reference, if not only from like an archival purpose, because this is a whole chunk of Star Trek lore that a lot of people don't know about, how Star Trek evolved from the original series into the animated series into eventually what became the motion picture. But there was a period of time there where this was going to be another series, a new television series, based in large part off of what we see in the motion picture. And this is a massive book. This is like a 300 and something page paperback. What is this? This is This is like a 360-page paperback. I don't think either one of these books is available in ebook, which is a huge, unfortunate loss to the universe. But if you can find a used copy, again, it's a huge trade paperback, but it is just full of great lore, especially about building a series, which you can use the brain to transition over to building a campaign, because it's very similar. Like those of you who've been game mastering for a while and maybe writing for a while, I'm confident you can see the parallels between writing a novel, planning out a campaign. Like there's a lot of parallels. At least I see them. Maybe you don't, but I see them. And maybe I'll do a video on that someday. Anyway, so all that being said, Captain's Log. Let me go back to the cover here, just to put it up on the screen. This happens to be the DS9 / Voyager cover. There are 3 other covers. The variant covers. The interior of the book absolutely identical, but the covers are different. The front cover is different, and then the back cover, the quote and the picture on the top is different. So anyway, yeah. What can you use with Captain's Log? Literally anything. Anything your creativity can come up with, you can use it in Captain's Log. Whether it's a Star Trek Adventures product, a digital product, print product, or literally any other Star Trek story out there. Whether it's a former RPG company that used Star Trek, or it's a video game, or a mobile game, or a graphic novel, or a comic book, or a video game, or a board game, or literally anything. I think there's so much Star Trek out there that all of it has a home in Captain's Log, and I don't think I can really say anything more than I think I've beat that down pretty good here in the last half hour. So, any questions on any of this, any comments on any of this, please drop them below. I hope you have fun with this. Like and subscribe to the channel, of course, and I'll be back with more of my actual play here pretty soon for Captain's Log. I'll be continuing the adventures of Commander Whitey on his ship as they get into their first adventure, and we'll see what happens with that. Of course, check out Continuing Conversations. Myself and Michael Dismuke talk every week about all things Star Trek Adventures and all things Captain's Log. We're working our way through a chapter-by-chapter review of the book now, so do check that out. And then I'm not hard to find on social media. Like, go on Twitter, go on the Facebook group, the Modiphius Discord, etc. I'm pretty easy to find. Reach out, love to chat with you, talk to you about the game, talk to you about Star Trek, all the great things that are happening right now. So thanks for your time, really appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will talk to you all again real soon.